Spring is finally here, which makes me so happy, and Easter is just around the corner. So I wanted to show you guys how I made these adorable little Easter bunny cinnamon rolls from scratch, as well as the recipes I used to make this little early Easter dinner for my family. So I wanted to do an early Easter dinner for a couple of reasons. For one, we'll be having our actual Easter dinner at my aunt's house. So I wanted to do something of my own, and this was the only time that I could do it, that Josh would be home. And also, of course, I wanted to get this up in case any of you guys wanted to use these recipes for your Easter tables. So yeah, this is something a little bit different. I hope you guys enjoy this video. So let's go ahead and get on into it. Okay, so let's start off with the bunny ears cinnamon rolls. So I went ahead and measured out 3/4 of a cup of milk. I'm using 2%, but use whatever you have on hand. And you'll also need a 1/3 cup of butter. So I'm just gonna add those two ingredients to a small saucepan, and I'm gonna heat this mixture over medium heat. As soon as that butter is melted, I will remove it from the heat. I'm not looking to boil this or anything. I also wanted to throw in that you could totally do this with canned cinnamon rolls. You don't have to do the homemade, but yeah, that's an option if you wanted to save some time. But moving on to the next step, I have measured out 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour, and to that I'm going to be adding in a 1/4 cup of sugar and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. You'll also need a package of this rapid rise instant yeast, and it is important to make sure it is the rapid rise for this particular recipe. So as you can tell, I'm just whisking together my dry ingredients first. At this point, I transferred it to my KitchenAid mixer. Why even bother dirtying up that first mixing bowl is beyond me. That was pretty pointless, and I didn't even realize it until I was editing this video. But anyways, I've just added in that package of yeast, and at this point, I can add in that lukewarm butter and milk mixture. So I'm just taking that same whisk, and I'm just going to quickly combine that, and then I'm going to add in 1 egg. So I'm going to be using my dough hook attachment to my mixer, and I'm just going to mix that egg in. You don't have to have a KitchenAid mixer to make this. You could totally do it by hand. But now I'm just adding in 1 cup of the all-purpose flour. So in total, you need 3 1/4 cup. So I'm just going to let that continue mixing until it forms a ball like so, and the sides of my bowl is clean. I have transferred my dough onto a piece of floured parchment paper, or you can just slap this straight onto the countertop. I know what most people do that. That would make it easier because then it wouldn't move around, but I'm just weird about that. I don't know why. I'm just like that. But I'm just going to roll this out with my rolling pin into a rectangle the best that I can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I will say that dough was extremely easy to work with. But now I'm just taking a pizza cutter, and I'm going to cut off about 1/3 of that dough, and that's what I'm going to use to make the ears. But now I'm getting started on the cinnamon sugar mixture, and all that is 3/4 a cup of brown sugar and 2 tablespoons of ground cinnamon. And now I'm just taking a fork and mashing that all up, making sure to really break up all of those brown sugar clumps. And yeah, that was easy enough. While I was mixing that together, I was melting down a few tablespoons of butter over on the stove. And I'm just taking my little silicone brush, and I am evenly spreading that out all over the dough. This is going to act as like a glue to make sure that all of that cinnamon sugar sticks. And then of course it's going to add flavor. Butter makes everything extra yummy. And at this point, I can go ahead and sprinkle on all of that cinnamon sugar. Okay, so now I'm just taking my pizza cutter and I'm cutting this into strips. So I was just following the directions on the recipe that I followed since this was my first time making homemade cinnamon rolls. But the next time I do this, I would probably do it the more traditional way by just rolling up the dough into like a pinwheel and then slicing the cinnamon rolls. I think that would save a little bit of time, and I think it would be a little less messy. But I'm sealing this off with some water that's going to help this stick together and keep everything together. And just look at how beautiful that is, like so satisfying if you ask me. On some of these I made them too big, so I just simply sliced them in half using some dental floss, and that worked pretty well. Again, making sure to seal with some water. But now moving on to the bunny ears. So I'm just going to slice this into strips as well. The thinner the better, but I'll know better next time. But I'm just going to stretch these out the best that I can and just making sure to really pat in that cinnamon sugar. And I'm just going to take the two ends and fold them to meet in the middle, sealing with water, pinching them together, and they should look like so. So I've just transferred all the cinnamon rolls onto a greased cookie sheet. And as you can see, I also added some water to like the top of that to get these two things to stick together. And I'm just going to work with that, trying to like fold that up into like bunny ears, and I think that's pretty good. I only did that on 4 of these, and I just left the second row as normal, and then we have the little straggly pieces that I wouldn't dare throw away. But moving on, before these get placed in the oven, I'm going to drizzle a little bit of heavy whipping cream onto each one. According to the girl that wrote this recipe, she said this is a must and to not skip this step, so I thought that was pretty interesting. But once I got that done, I popped them in at 350 degrees for 15 minutes. While those were baking, I whipped up a quick cream cheese frosting that turned out so amazing. And all you need is 1 stick of butter at room temperature. Again, I'm using unsalted. And you'll also need a half a block of cream cheese, also room temperature. I actually forgot to sit that out with the butter, so I popped it in the microwave for like 15 seconds. I'm just going to whip those together with my paddle attachment. And then I'm going to add in 2 cups of powdered sugar or confectioner sugar. Same thing, just whatever you call it. And I'm just going to whip that together. And lastly, I'm just going to add in 2 tablespoons of the heavy whipping cream. And just look at this consistency. It turned out absolutely perfect. And here are the cinnamon rolls straight from the oven. When I first pulled them out, I got a little bit worried because I thought they looked a little bit wonky, but you just got to trust the process. Once you get them transferred to a serving dish and get them frosted, they will be just fine. So I did add that cream cheese frosting on while they were still hot, just like you would with canned cinnamon rolls, and just look at how pretty they are. These were a little bit time consuming, but then again, I have to factor in the time to like film everything and take the pictures. That takes a lot longer. So after I bit into one of these, I knew right away that I would definitely be making these again because they were so incredible. I love canned cinnamon rolls, but these were like 10 times better, and my kids were so happy. So let's jump on into this Easter dinner. I'm going to show you guys everything in the order that I made them. So I started off the day with deviled eggs. This is a must at any special occasion in my opinion. And basically I'm just going to show you how I colored the egg whites to make them look a little more festive. So I'm just using this red food coloring that I already had on hand. You can use any color, of course. You could do a few different colors in different bowls. I know they even make the pastel like food coloring specifically for Easter. That would look really cool with this, but yeah, like I said, I'm just using what I had. So I just added a few drops to that bowl. I filled the bowl halfway up with water, and I just soaked my egg whites for 30 minutes. Then I drained off that water, and I took a paper towel and dried off each one, and that's what they ended up looking like. I was hoping for them to turn out a little bit more pink. I don't know why I thought that would happen, but they still look pretty cool. And then as for my deviled egg filling, I like it to be really simple. So I just do mayo, mustard, salt, and pepper. And recently I've started adding in just a little bit of dill pickle juice, and that makes them even more amazing. But yeah, I thought these turned out pretty cute. Next up, I am going to be making a pea salad. This is something that I have never in my life had before, and I had no clue what to expect. So I have a 12-ounce bag of frozen peas that I have thawed out. I'm going to do some mozzarella and sharp cheddar cheese, about a half a cup of each, 3/4 a cup of mayo. This was my first time buying the Kraft brand, and we really liked it, by the way. Also some salt, pepper, and onion powder. That was it. This was incredibly easy. The original recipe that I was looking at actually called for some cooked and crumbled bacon. I decided to leave that out, but I could see how that would be a really good addition to this. But pretty much I'm just throwing everything into this mixing bowl. I'm going to cover it with some cling wrap, let that sit in the fridge for a few hours to let all of those flavors marry together, and it will be ready to serve. I got the idea to make this side dish because I got to thinking about how much my husband used to talk about how much he loved his mom's pea salad. She used to make it for him all the time when he lived with his parents before we got married, and I just wanted to throw in something that I knew that he would love. This isn't how she made hers though, or makes hers I should say. I know she does mayo, like diced real onion, salt and pepper. I'm not sure if she adds anything else because I've never tried it, because if you don't know, I cannot do real onions. But I will say I loved how the onion powder came through in this recipe, and I feel like that is what made it. I wasn't too sure about this one. I didn't think I'd like it, but I loved it, and I already know I'm gonna make it all the time this summer because it's such a refreshing, cool little salad. Now it is time to prepare the ham. So I'm using a Kentucky Legend Sweet Honey Smoked Ham. I'm pretty sure this is my first time buying this type of ham. Ham is definitely something that I rarely make. This was almost 3.5 pounds. So I'm just going to obviously remove that from the package and place that into a casserole dish. And I am going to decorate it with some sliced pineapples and some maraschino cherries. I'm pretty sure I said that right. Maybe I didn't, but y'all know what I'm saying. And I'm just going to secure that with some toothpicks. I also wanted to add that this ham didn't come pre-sliced, so I did decide to slice it. That way the glaze that I'm going to add to it can kind of seep down into all the pieces. Now I am going to whip up the glaze. So in this measuring cup, I'm adding in some of that pineapple juice, as well as some of the cherry juice, as well as some honey. So I'm not actually measuring out any of these ingredients. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. But as always, if I follow a recipe, you'll be able to find a link to it down below in my description box if you're interested and want to look further into it. I will say that recipe I'm going to link, she is using an 8 to 10 pound ham. And as I said, mine's just not even 3.5 pounds, so I did try to kind of half everything, but I added in some yellow mustard, some brown sugar, nutmeg, cinnamon, ground cloves, and some ground ginger. And I will say that spice mix is what made this so delicious, I believe. I also added in some cornstarch. I actually added in a little bit too much because it made it extremely thick, which kind of took away from the appearance of the cherries and the pineapples, which you'll see here in a little bit. And you can, kind of judge that for yourself. But I just mix that together, put it in a saucepan, and let that simmer for a few minutes just until it thickened. And then I'm going to simply just drizzle that all over the ham, trying to make sure that I cover every little inch of it. And I'm going to cook that at 325 degrees for 30 minutes. This will, of course, depend on the size of your ham. And then I took it out and kind of basted it, and I'm going to pop it in for a final 30 minutes. And here is what it looked like when it came out of the oven. I'm not the type of person that gets excited over a ham. I'm a sides type of girl, but I will say we loved this. Between the natural smokiness from the ham itself to that extremely flavorful glaze and just the pineapple and cherries, I would highly recommend. It was so, so good. What goes better with ham than cheesy scallop potatoes? I have been craving these for forever now, and it has been so long since I have made these from scratch, and I don't know why, because it is so simple to do. And if you know me at all, you know I am a cheesehead. So the first thing I'm going to do is peel and thinly slice 4 good-sized russet potatoes, roughly 2 pounds, and I'm going to shred my own cheese. That way it can be extra creamy and cheesy. I normally do sharp cheddar cheese for stuff like this, but Kroger was out, so I just did some extra sharp cheddar, which is good as well. But here I kind of wanted to show you the thickness of my potatoes. I sliced them as thinly as I could. If you have a mandolin slicer, that would work perfectly for this, but I don't have one right now. But I just let those soak in some water, that way they wouldn't brown while I was doing everything else. But now I'm going to get started on a little cheese sauce. So I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of butter to my saucepan, a big spoonful of minced garlic, and I'm just going to cook that for a couple of minutes until it's nice and fragrant. And then I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of some flour, and I'm just going to whisk that and cook that for a few minutes to get that flour taste out. And this is what's going to thicken up your sauce. So now I'm going to add in 1.5 cups of milk. And I'm just going to let that simmer until it thickens to my liking. And at this point, I'm just going to season it with some salt and lots of black pepper. And then I'm going to add in a little less than a cup of that cheese that I shredded up. And I am just going to stir that until it is melted, and that is it. Now I am going to take out an 8x8 casserole dish, and I am just going to butter the bottom and the sides to make sure that nothing sticks. And then I have drained my potatoes, and I am just going to layer them into the bottom. And I'm going to season those with some salt and pepper as well. The recipe doesn't say to do this, but I couldn't imagine skipping that step because I don't feel like the cheese sauce would season it enough. So I'm just using half of that cheese sauce on this layer and spreading that out the best that I could, adding a little bit of cheese, and then I'm just going to repeat that layer. So I finished off the potatoes, again, seasoned those, and I just topped it off with the rest of that cheese sauce and then the rest of that shredded cheese. And I'm just going to bake this at 350 degrees, uncovered, for 1 hour. And that's it. So cheesy and delicious. 10 out of 10. You just can't go wrong here. I wanted to add in my favorite way to cook asparagus. I know I've shared it a few times, but if you missed it, here you go. So after I wash my asparagus and chop off the woody ends, I add in 1 cup of water to my skillet, put a lid on, and I set the temperature to high, and I set a timer for 5 minutes. Then I drain off any excess water, and then I throw in a little bit of butter, and I like to just use some garlic sea salt. It is the perfect combination with this asparagus and really anything. I just love it. If you wanted to add some Parmesan cheese, now is when you would do so, but I like it simple and just like this. I saute that for about a minute, and it is absolute perfection. It is my all-time favorite vegetable. I had every intention of making some homemade dinner rolls to go with this meal, but at this point, I was honestly just cooked out. So I went with some frozen ones that I already had on hand. It's the Sister Schubert ones. These are my go-to. You just cook them in the oven for like 5 minutes or even the air fryer, and they're really good. But I will link a video to the homemade dinner rolls that I was going to make because they're super good. But here's everything all tied together. I just put them on these little Easter plates that I got at Kroger, and it was a super good meal. I was so thankful to be able to make this for my family and for us all to enjoy it together. But if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I hope this can be a bit helpful for you, and I wish you all a very happy Easter.